Hi everyone, what's up? Welcome back. My name is Annie. I'm a Pilates and yoga instructor, and I am here to answer your frequently asked questions about Pilates. My goal is to help you better understand Pilates. Pilates is pretty intimidating. It's, I think, a little misunderstood. There's a stigma, there's a stereotype about it, and I'm just here to help encourage you, educate you, help you feel really safe so you can give it a try. Pilates has impacted my life in so many ways. Not only has it, helped me heal injury and chronic pain, it's just giving me a deeper connection to my breath and my presence and my posture day to day. And it's just the form of movement that feels best in my body. I've had so much experience with various boot camp, Soul Cycle, even yoga, hot yoga, running. I've really dabbled in it all, and nothing has felt quite like Pilates does in my body. It's the perfect balance of support, stretch, mobility, strength, endurance, and cardio. Okay, enough about me. Let's hop into our FAQs. Today we'll be answering what is Pilates, where does it come from, what's the origin of it, the history. Pilates has such a unique history, so make sure you stick around for this. I'm really excited about this part. And then what is the difference between yoga and Pilates? They're very often compared to each other. Pilates is a physical form of exercise. It is a mind-body technique that works to connect mind with body, body with mind. Pilates is a low-impact sequence of exercises that incorporates all the major joints, muscle groups, gets you through all the ranges of motion in your spine and those joints. And it's really, really accessible to all bodies because there's so much equipment, there's so many variations. Pilates does a really good job teaching the student how to know which muscles are moving when and where, which ones might be overworking, underworking, so we can recruit the right muscle groups to do the movement in the most optimal, efficient, safe way for our unique bodies. A great example of this is our hip flexor muscle group tends to take over, say, when you're on your back with your legs in tabletop. Pilates will teach you how to slowly turn off those loud, greedy muscles that want to do all the work, and how to reload the core, reload the respiratory muscles, so diaphragm, transverse abdominis, pelvic floor, to release stress and strain and get the right muscles working at the right time. So Pilates, not only is it a mind-body technique and a physical form of exercise, it is a form of education, a form of body education to teach the student the how and the why of their own anatomy. Pilates trainings teach us from the beginning no pain ever. There's no pushing and moving and forcing through pain. The second that we start to feel pain, it's a message from the body to pause. Let's reevaluate the range of motion, the weight, the stretch of this shape, and offer variations to get the person in the right place to move pain-free. I like to think of Pilates as physical therapy, but more flowy and exciting and creative in the arrangement of exercises. There are 6 principles to Pilates, some variation to them across the board depending on your training, but the 6 original are concentration, center, control, breath, precision, and flow. So everything you do in Pilates is going to incorporate all of those to give you this holistic movement method. Like I mentioned, depending on where you train, there's little variation to the principles. I am trained in Stop Pilates. It's almost identical to classical Pilates. The main difference is the way they teach the placement of the pelvis. More on that later, but there are 6 other principles to Stop Pilates, which are your breathing, your pelvic placement, rib cage placement, shoulder stability and mobility, and head neck placement. So if you work with me, if you check out my videos, you'll notice that added layer. I really focus on those different parts of your body, and I call those my principles, even though the original 6 principles are the ones I just told you about. So in Pilates, you have various pieces of equipment. They are not necessary, but they add to the experience. They enhance it through modifications and variety. You have your mat Pilates, reformer, Cadillac tower, your chair, and your barrels. In order to better understand the equipment of Pilates and the overall intention of what it is, we need to now talk about where it came from and why. So the history of Pilates. Joseph Pilates was a German man, and he came up with Pilates in the early 1900s during World War I. So around 1914 to 1917, Britain, which is where he was living at the time, placed all German men in internment camps because they feared that they would go back to Germany to become soldiers and fight in the war. So Joseph Pilates, he's in this internment camp. He is a personal trainer. His father was a gymnast. His mother was a naturopath. So he already had this education and these core values that health and livelihood was related to movement. So he noticed people weren't doing well in this camp. Whether they were getting ill, they had injury, they were sedentary, they weren't eating well, he decided to fix this problem. His mission was that people would leave the internment camp better than how they entered into it. So he started moving with everyone, teaching them self-defense, gymnastics, eventually Pilates. He originally called it Contrology, but it is now referred to as just Pilates. So Joseph Pilates introduced movement to the camp, made people feel better. They were doing better. He saw the noticeable effects, and he saw that he had the opportunity to help people who were less mobile, who were the more injured and sick, who couldn't get up on their feet and do everything. So he used what he had at his fingertips, which was his furniture, to then create accessible equipment for everyone to use. His bed, the metal springs on his bed, the bunk bed, the chair, those were all the first edition of the Pilates equipment. This is just my favorite part about the history because it just drives home the message that Pilates was created to literally sustain life, to literally help people stay alive. It wasn't just about the physical practice or how we look or getting stronger in our bodies. It was the holistic part of the impact of movement of the body, the impact of concentration of the mind, the impact of breath linked with movement, linked with concentration. And I can confidently say that as a student and as an instructor that this intention still lives in modern Pilates today. So my friends who are watching this, who have physical limitations or chronic pain or injury, your joints don't feel good when you lift weights or even go walking, there are so many options for you when it comes to Pilates. Pilates has an incredible variation, modifications, and the structure of Pilates is, yes, you have group classes, but you also have one-on-one work, and you get that one-on-one attention that you need for us instructors to create a program for you that progresses you through the exercises, through the tiers, so we can meet your body where it's at, so you can still get strength and endurance and cardio in a different way. You don't have to go running. You don't have to do weights. It's really, really accessible. By now we feel super clear on Pilates, so let's talk about yoga. Yoga is not one thing or one class, one exercise. It is a culture. It is a way of life. It is a spiritual discipline. One part of yoga is a physical practice, which is called your asanas, your poses. So in yoga, there's this 8-limb path to enlightenment, 8-limb tree to enlightenment. And out of the 8 limbs, one of them is physical yoga practice. You have other things like breath work and meditation and your yamas and niyamas, service to others, service to self. Now, yoga and Pilates do have really similar physical practices. All you need is your mat and your body. There's a lot of modification, variation. There's breath work and mindfulness involved. You see even similar shapes, bridge pose and shoulder bridge. So there are a lot of things that they have in common. And while there is crossover, at the end of the day, they have very different intentions and origins that just sets them apart from being completely different things. Yoga actually inspired Joseph Pilates to create Pilates. So his original form, called contrology, used to be described as yogic cat-like movements of the spine. So they're very intertwined, but they're also very different. And now to answer the last question, why is Pilates typically more expensive than something like yoga? This answer is based on my experience as a student, as a teacher of both yoga and Pilates. I realize that there are other perspectives out there, and if you have a different perspective, pop a comment below. Let's start a conversation. Yoga teacher training programs are pretty often an intensive experience, meaning it's a fast track experience. Whether you're getting your 200 hour or your 500 hour, you can get it as soon as 2 weeks or like 4 or 5 months. And so I just find that because it is a fast-tracked experience, that you aren't getting full in-depth learning on all the topics that they cover, such as history, philosophy, poses, sequencing, anatomy, special populations for modifications. I find that programs often skim on those things to get it in, to get people through the program. My program did that for sure. So my program didn't give me in-depth training. They essentially taught me how to be a good teacher, like how to create space, hold space, how to cue and speak clearly in class, but they didn't really teach me critical thinking, how to help someone with this issue versus this issue. Pilates trainings, on the other hand, are a longer experience. So I find them to be way more thorough, way more in-depth, specifically with anatomy and special populations. So reading postures, postural analysis, cueing to the body's unique needs. So knowing what this person needs versus that person, whether or not they have an injury, because we all have unique needs. So to me, that just shows the level of education. I find that when you go to a Pilates class these days, it's safe to expect that your teacher has a pretty in-depth education about anatomy and injuries. And the methodology of yoga, especially right now in the West, yoga teaches you to push yourself beyond safe stretches in hot rooms. That is like the one goal, is to like deepen your stretch and get more flexible. And Pilates has taught me that that is not always the safest. Like we need joint stability and mobility and not just flexibility. I think a balance of both is great. That is one reason why I think there is a price difference, because you get a different level of education. Second reason I think that there's such a price difference is because in Pilates there's so much equipment. So remember, the equipment gives us variety, modifications. It also enhances the experience because you can do so much. You are not confined to just your mat. You can do so many exercises on the equipment. And so I think when you're going to a group class, you're paying, one, for the price of education and training that the teacher has, and you're also paying for the experience using the equipment. And remember, I'm just speaking from my experience. I also got my yoga teacher training about 9 years ago, and I realized that there have been so many improvements in the industry. If you are curious and wanting to get your yoga teacher training certificate, look for programs that are really thorough in what you specifically want. Some of them are so thorough in history, philosophy, some are more thorough in anatomy. Make sure you find something that's going to serve you and your interests. If you're looking for one that's really good in anatomy, check out Yoga Medicine. It is so good, full of information about the whole body, like every system, not just your muscular skeletal body. Thank you so much for sticking around, learning about Pilates, geeking out with me. I could talk about this shit forever, but we're gonna stop it there, and be sure to check back because I'm gonna keep revisiting frequently asked questions here on my channel. And if you want to learn more about me and Pilates as a whole, click the link below and you can visit my website, see what I do.